Doug. I'm here with Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, and welcome to the show. Welcome to AIPAC. Is this your first time here at AIPAC?
It is not. I've been many times.
Many times AIPAC. Senator Cruz is known to be a big supporter of Israel and a big supporter of AIPAC, and I just want to thank you for being here and for showing your support for everything today.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're gonna watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug. Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about that.
So I'm welcome to Take with Rabbi Doug. We're here in Washington, D.C. for part 3 and AIPAC 16. More candidates, more speakers, more about the Israel-American relationship. You won't want to miss this 3rd episode at AIPAC 16 in Washington, D.C. on Take with Rabbi Doug.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Republican presidential candidate Ted Cruz.
God bless AIPAC. I'm thrilled to be here with you today. And let me say at the outset, perhaps to the surprise of the previous speaker, Palestine has not existed since 1948. On Wednesday night of this week, in synagogues across the world, Jewish people will read the Megillah, which tells the story of Purim, the miraculous rescue of the Jewish people from the hands of a wicked Persian king. When the evildoer Haman plots to kill the Jews, he describes them as a nation that is scattered and spread out. The Talmud teaches that the Jewish people at the time were divided amongst themselves, and that the lesson is that when the forces of good are divided, evil can prevail. But when we come together in unity, together, we can defeat tyrants. In the midst of these rocket attacks, we saw the Obama administration cancel civilian airline flights into the nation of Israel. When that happened, I publicly asked the question, did this administration just launch an economic boycott on the nation of Israel? The administration does not ban flights into Pakistan, does not ban flights into Yemen, does not ban flights into Afghanistan, indeed, did not ban flights into much of Ukraine, and Ukraine had just seen a passenger airliner shot down by a Russian Buk missile. So why exactly was a disproportionate sanction put on Israel? Because one rocket fell harmlessly a mile away from Ben Gurion Airport, one of the safest airports in the world. And why was that time to coincide with John Kerry arriving in the Middle East with $47 million for Gaza that would inevitably end up with Hamas terrorists? So when I asked that question, within hours the State Department was being asked, is this an economic boycott of Israel? The State Department said that question is ridiculous. We refuse to answer. So I responded, fine, I will place a hold on every nominee to the State Department. Shortly thereafter, former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg rode a civilian airliner from London to Tel Aviv, demonstrating that it was safe to fly to Israel. as a result of Mayor Bloomberg's efforts and my efforts and that of millions of others, the heat and light and attention became too much on this administration, and within 36 hours, the administration lifted its ban on civilian air flights to Israel. Looking forward, as president, I will lead very, very differently from the current administration. Imagine just a few years ago, if I had come to an AIPAC conference and suggested that the Prime Minister of Israel was going to come to America, address a joint session of Congress, and he would be boycotted by the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and every member of the Cabinet. That would have been dismissed as crazy, fanciful, that could never happen, and sadly, that is exactly what did happen when Prime Minister Netanyahu came to address Congress. In a similar vein, my leading Republican opponent has promised that he, as president, would be neutral between Israel and the Palestinians. Well, let me be very, very clear. As president, I will not be neutral. This agreement gives over $100 billion to the Ayatollah Khamenei, the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. That dwarfs the $3 billion in military aid we give each year to the nation of Israel. That difference is not just unconscionable, it is fundamentally immoral. And if I am president, on the first day, we will reimpose sanctions on Iran. In a mockery of this Iranian nuclear deal, Iran has continued with missile tests, including launching a missile with the words printed on it in both Hebrew and Farsi. Israel should be wiped from the earth. Hear my words, Ayatollah Khamenei. If I am president and Iran launches a missile test, we will shoot that missile down. And in January 2017, we will have a commander-in-chief who says, under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. Either you will shut down your nuclear program, or we will shut it down for you. A year ago, when Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed Congress, I was honored to join the great Elie Wiesel on a panel discussion in the Senate about this disastrous Iranian deal. Not a single Democrat was willing to join Elie Wiesel, to sit alongside someone who witnessed firsthand the horrors of the Holocaust, who brings a moral weight and gravity second to none, was both powerful and humble. And I am convinced, after this election, the American people will stand and say to get together, never again means never again. On my very first day in office, I will begin the process of moving the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital of Israel. Have said that. Indeed, I recognize some candidates have said that standing here today. Here's the difference. I will do it. The way to avoid conflict is to stand up to bullies, and it is worth remembering that this same nation, Iran, in 1981, released our hostages the day Ronald Reagan was sworn into office. a strong commander-in-chief can make, and together, standing as one, we can and will do it again. Thank you. God bless America, and Am Yisrael Chai.
Hi, I'm Illinois State Treasurer Mike Frericks, and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug.
Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. AIPAC 16 on Tape with Rabbi Doug.
Wow. God, all I gotta say is wow. Man, it is really nice to see you here today. You know, I want to say to Howard Core, to Bob Cohen, and to Lillian Pincus, thank you so much for inviting me here today. It is fantastic to be with you. Welcome to Washington, D.C. You know, I heard from a lot of folks today that you've heard from a lot of folks today. And it's always a good thing when America's leaders declare their support for Israel. You know what? It's not enough though. The speeches, the statements, all the words in the world mean nothing if you do not back them up with actions. That is why, 2 years ago, when the rockets were falling on Tel Aviv, the House approved emergency support for the Iron Dome. And that is why within just 2 months of my taking the speakership, we voted to fund every penny of our security assistance commitment. And that is why, in my first trip overseas as Speaker of the House, my first trip will be to return to Israel. And that is why I can pledge to you here tonight that as long as I'm the Speaker of the House, we will not allow any legislation that divides our countries to come to the House floor for any consideration. It is action and deeds that builds trust. And our friendship is too important. The dangers we face today are too real to let there be any misgivings between us. You know, like my House colleagues, I understand that America is not safer when we back away from Israel. America is safer when we stand with Israel. And so, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you again for having me tonight. I want to thank you in advance for all the work that you will be doing to help us strengthen that essential friendship and that bond between Israel and America. And I want to thank you for being fantastic Americans and helping make sure that we get our ship of state right. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you. Have a great time. And know that if you're not here, you're out of sight. If you're out of sight, you're out of mind. So make sure you keep doing it. Thank you, and God bless you.
Hi, I'm Bill Foster, the last scientist in the United States Congress, and you're watching Rabbi Doug.
At a moment where
Rubio of Florida.
it is not an exaggeration to say that the future of Israel is in danger more than at any other time in the 5 years that I've been in the United States Senate. It's easy to say words like that, but when you look at the world and as it stands today, it's hard not to conclude that. I think it begins with an all-out effort to delegitimize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. It's a movement that has found a home in European parliaments. and even here in academia in the United States. I've said this clearly before, so I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. I believe that much of this anti-Israel action that is occurring on this planet today is nothing but anti-Semitism. Our foreign policy speeches would be shorter, and our agenda would not be nearly as complicated, but there's only one. And so people ask constantly, and I think this is important for us, because obviously all of you in this room here today are strong supporters of the state of Israel. But this is an ongoing process, which requires leadership in each generation to instill in a new generation why this is so important for America to stand firmly on Israel's side. To me, it begins by simply making the argument that it's in our national security interest. It is in our national security interest, not just for Israel to survive, but for Israel to prosper. It is in the national security interest of the United States, for a nation such as this, to continue not just to exist, but to serve as an example to the rest of the world. But I believe it speaks too to our morality as a people and as a nation. Israel is not just another country. It was a nation created in the aftermath of the Holocaust to ensure that never again would there never be a homeland for the Jewish people to be able to go to in the face of persecution and sure death. These two things bind us to Israel, and it calls upon each generation of Americans to stand firmly alongside it. On the question of Israel's future, I know of no people that want peace more than the people of Israel do. And yet it is a people who each and every time that land has been turned over, that land has been used to attack Israel. And that's why I've argued fervently over the last year that the Golan Heights should be permanently in the hands of the Israeli government.
I'm Jeremy Bash, and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Republican presidential candidate John Kasich.
AIPAC, an organization I've known and worked with since the early 1980s. You know, I first visited Israel in 1983 with my late dear friend Gordon Sachs. As you all know, Gordon was a founding member of AIPAC, and it was on that trip that I actually visited Bethlehem, and I called my mother on Christmas night from Jerusalem. As you can imagine, it was a very, very special moment. And Gordon always reminded me of it. Gordon helped me as much as anyone has over the years to know and to appreciate the importance of our relationship with Israel and Israel's unique security challenges. And I can't think of a better guy who could have taken me to Israel. It was on my trip in 1983 that Gordon introduced me to Avital Sharansky when her husband, Natan, was still in a Soviet prison. She told me her husband's story over lunch at the King David Hotel in Jerusalem and said she was going to Washington to plead for his release. I asked her, would you mind if I organized a rally in support of your husband on the steps of the Capitol? And so we came together in a bipartisan way to call for Natan Sharansky's release. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, has in turn been a faithful and dependable friend. The American Friends of Israel are not fair weather friends. They recognize the strategic hinge with Israel and that America's and Israel's interests are tightly intertwined, despite our inevitable disagreements from time to time. We share a critically important common interest in the Middle East, the unrelenting opposition to Iran's attempts to develop nuclear weapons. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today in front of so many of you who have contributed so much. You see, we're connected together. It's about civilization. It's about peace. It's about love. It's about togetherness. It's about healing the world. The great Jewish tradition is everyone lives a life a little bigger than themselves. And that tradition has worked its way deep into my soul. where I tell people all across America, dig down deep. The Lord has made you special. Live a life bigger than yourself. Lift others, heal, provide hope, provide progress. And with that, the rest of the century and the relationship between the United States and Israel will grow stronger and stronger for the benefit and mutual security of the world. Thank you all very much, and God bless.
We're here once again on Taped with Rabbi Doug, and I am here with my good friend, Professor Steven Resnicoff. Welcome to the show, Professor Resnicoff. He is the director of the Center for Jewish Law and Judaic Studies at DePaul University, and we've talked about that we would talk on TV for a long time, and I hope to have you on a full show. But I want to talk to you about AIPAC a little bit. We're here in Washington, D.C. at AIPAC 16, listening to presidential candidates, listening to senators, congressmen, listening to other lawmakers, listening to journalists and other educators as well, talking about the American-Israel relationship. So my first question for you is, as an expert in this field, do you feel like things are being done properly right now? Do you feel that the candidates are going to, whoever ends up winning, are going to change things from the way they've been in the Obama administration? Do you think that we're in trouble with Iran right now, or do you think that we're stable currently with the plan that Obama has set up? What are your feelings about these subjects which have been talked about so much?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I think it's difficult because there's so many topics to talk about. So some can be dealt with well, and some not, and so on. But I think one thing that you hear often by experts is that in the Middle East, there's a mentality. You have to know who you're dealing with. You have to understand who your adversary is. You have to understand who your friends are. And one thing that almost everybody agrees on is that the attitude of ISIS, the attitude of Iran, and the attitude of the adversaries in the Middle East is that they respect power and they don't respect weakness. And so, given that the Iranians humiliated the American sailors who they took into prison for that small incursion, the fact that they tried to humiliate the American craft by firing missiles just near their boats, and the fact that they go ahead and have ballistic missile tests with writing on it in Hebrew, not just Farsi, saying that Israel should be wiped off the face of the earth, I think America, to be taken more seriously, has to find some appropriate response. It doesn't, certainly not a military response, but some appropriate response, financial response, some way to get the message over to the other side that we're not just not going to wilt and not going to let them have their way.
Okay. So tell me this. You know that in universities right now, BDS and these anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian groups are really very, very visible, And you and the students that you cater to, who are in Jewish studies and studying Jewish law, are certainly bombarded by these. And of course, there's SSI, students supporting Israel, to counter it. But you don't see the same level of antagonism out of SSI like you do from the BDS supporters. How do you think we should be reacting to these things in real life time? In other words, not just looking at it and saying we have to counter, demonstrate and things. How should we really be reacting to it and educating the public?
The anti-Israel and anti-Semitic campaign, propaganda campaign on campuses is a major problem. It's a war. It's a battle not just for the hearts and minds of America's future leaders and future decision makers, future voters, but also for Jews, for the Jewish students. Jewish students are intimidated. They're verbally abused. They're sometimes physically abused. Their property is vandalized. They're afraid to wear Mogen David. They're afraid to show that they're Jewish. They're hiding, and it's a terrible situation. Both because I was speaking at a program that our center sponsored at DePaul. And one of the people in the audience, an attorney, got up and said he had two daughters at a very prominent school. And unfortunately, they fell for the propaganda, and they're alienated from the Jewish people. I mean, it's not just a question of the issue of Israel. It's a question of the state of Israel. It's a question of being a Jew. And the idea that Judaism and being pro-Israel is equated to being bad, evil, Nazi-like is a terrible, terrible thing. What we have to do is prevent students from shutting down speakers. In Chicago, there was a speaker, a pro-Palestinian, UN rights advocate who started an organization called B'Tselem, which was anything but complimentary to Israel. He came to Chicago, tried to speak at the University of Chicago, at DePaul, and at Northwestern, because he believes the only way to improve the lot of the Palestinians is to teach them that there has to be a two-state solution. There has to be recognition of Israel. Instead of trying to futilely destroy Israel, work together with your neighbors. He wanted to get that message across that Hamas is doing the opposite of what's good for the Palestinian people, and he was shut down. He was shut down completely, basically, at Northwestern. It was the third venue. University of Chicago, he was shut down. DePaul, they were a little prepared for him. We were a little prepared for him, so we got for the protesters who threatened him, not just tried to disrupt him, but threatened him. And at Northwestern, DePaul, the program was a Saturday night, we co-sponsored it. Sunday morning, he went to Northwestern University, saw some of the same protesters, and he didn't even speak. He went away without speaking. He was shut down. So they can't, it's amazing. The BDS people, the anti-Semitic and anti-Israel people, complain about their free speech. They're not getting their free speech. But in fact, just as in many other areas, they speak out of both sides of the mouth. They want to have their free speech, even if it's hatred speech, even if it's improper speech. But they don't want to let anybody else who disagrees with them say anything.
It's terrible. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Professor Steven Resnicoff of DePaul University. I hope to see you again very soon and talk to you soon again. Hopefully we'll have you on the show again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. We'll be back right here on Tape with Rabbi Doug. Zusha on Tape with Rabbi Doug at AIPAC Conference 16.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.